They believe you are fragile. They assume your patience has limits, that your silence is a weakness, that your presence is something to provoke. This is the fatal error of those who mistake perception for reality. Every human mind is a battlefield, and few understand that the true weapon is not force, but the architecture of thought itself. To dismantle an enemy mentally is to enter their consciousness without entering their physical space. It is to plant seeds of doubt where confidence once stood, to erode certainty without a single gesture of violence, and to render them prisoners of their own impulses. Power is not granted by confrontation, it is seized in absence, in the spaces you leave behind, in the invisible threads of control that others fail to recognize. The first principle of mental domination is the manipulation of perception. Humans construct their identities around what they perceive others to believe about them. When you subtly distort their understanding, when silence, ambiguity, and deliberate inaction become your tools, you do not merely confuse, you reshape their reality. They will chase shadows of your intention, deciphering strategies that exist only in their overactive, insecure minds. Every glance they interpret, every word they mishear, every pattern they believe they detect becomes a weapon you wield, without ever lifting a finger. A mind obsessed is a mind enslaved. Understand the economy of attention. Every thought your enemy devotes to you is a resource extracted from their own equilibrium. Obsession is not caused by noise, it is caused by absence. A presence that is calculated, restrained, and meticulously selective fractures the psyche more efficiently than confrontation. In the empty spaces between your actions, you cultivate paranoia. They begin to question their competence, their judgment, their reality. This is the quiet art of psychological erosion. It is not personal, it is tactical. Human egos are fragile, brittle constructs, easily undermined by contradictions and inconsistency. When your adversary encounters a dissonance between expectation and reality, when you act unpredictably, yet always with purpose, they begin to experience internal collapse. Their identity, once a fortress, cracks under the pressure of uncertainty. They are compelled to reconcile illusions with truth, and in this fissure you operate. Every subtle correction, every controlled provocation, every strategic silence chips away at their composure. This is not chaos, this is mastery. Control is rooted in perception, yet perception itself is malleable. The enemy believes they understand you, yet the true strategist exists in the spaces they cannot map. Invisibility is a weapon. Emotional restraint is a sword. Every action is a signal, every non-action a trap. The mind you seek to dominate is already vulnerable. It only requires calibration, timing, and the relentless patience of a predator who understands that the slow erosion of certainty is more devastating than any immediate strike. To FCK, an enemy mentally is to turn their own mechanisms of thought against them. Obsession, regret, hesitation, misjudgment, the collapse of ego, these are the stages you will induce. Each step is predictable because human nature is constant. Yet predictability does not imply weakness, it implies opportunity. Machiavelli understood that power is often won in silence, in observation, in the careful orchestration of perception rather than brute force. Your adversary will not see the trap until it has already ensnared them. By the end of this strategy, your enemy will experience a fracture so subtle it will feel self-inflicted. They will believe they failed themselves, that their own mind betrayed them. This is the ultimate domination, when conquest does not require confrontation, when control is internalized, and when the battlefield exists entirely within the boundaries of thought. The coming sections will dissect the 7 psychological layers of this assault. Each is a precise mechanism designed to unsettle, to destabilize, and to assert dominance without a word spoken or a blow struck. Here begins the architecture of mental annihilation. The first fracture in the enemy's mind begins not with action, but with disappearance. Strategic absence is the most misunderstood form of power because it violates the primitive expectation of reaction. The human mind is conditioned to measure itself through resistance, feedback, engagement. When none arrives, when the expected friction dissolves into silence, the psyche turns inward and begins to consume itself. Your absence does not signal retreat, it signals that they no longer qualify for your attention. This implication alone destabilizes identity. When you remove access, emotional, verbal, psychological, you deny them the mirror they use to confirm their importance. The ego cannot tolerate invisibility. It demands recognition, even in conflict. Deprived of it, the mind begins to spiral. Questions emerge uninvited. Why no response? What does this mean? Have I miscalculated my position? These questions do not seek answers, they seek relief from uncertainty. None will come. Silence becomes an open wound. Absence forces projection. With no data, the enemy fills the void with assumptions, fears, and imagined scenarios. They replay past interactions, dissecting tone, posture, timing. What was once casual becomes suspicious. What was insignificant becomes loaded with meaning. You have not acted, yet their mind is in constant motion. This is dominance without presence, control without contact. Machiavellian power operates by shifting effort onto the opponent. Strategic absence does exactly this. While you conserve emotional economy, they hemorrhage cognitive resources. Their focus drifts from purpose to fixation. Productivity decays. Emotional regulation weakens. They begin to act impulsively, attempting to provoke a reaction, to reclaim relevance. Every attempt exposes desperation. Every escalation confirms inferiority. The most devastating aspect of absence is that it appears passive while functioning as an active assault. There is no accusation to defend against, no behavior to challenge. The enemy cannot confront what is not there. They are left alone with the possibility that they were never significant to begin with. This thought corrodes pride at its foundation. Strategic absence is not avoidance. It is filtration. It establishes hierarchy without declaration. Those beneath you feel it immediately, though they may not understand why. The mind resists silence, but it collapses under sustained ambiguity. In this collapse, the enemy begins the long descent into psychological submission, initiated not by force, but by your refusal to exist on their terms. The human mind survives on pattern. It seeks rhythm, consistency, cause and effect. From this, it extracts safety and illusionary control. When pattern collapses, anxiety replaces certainty. Controlled unpredictability is the deliberate disruption of expectation, a psychological maneuver that fractures the enemy's ability to anticipate, prepare, or defend. This is not chaos. Chaos is impulsive. Unpredictability, when wielded with intent, is calculated disorientation. Your enemy studies you, consciously or not. They map your reactions, your limits, your emotional responses. They believe familiarity grants leverage. The moment you violate the pattern they constructed, responding when silence was expected, remaining silent when provocation was designed, you shatter their internal model of you. This destabilization is immediate. Their confidence erodes, not because you attacked, but because their understanding failed. Unpredictability attacks the ego through humiliation without exposure. The enemy realizes they do not know you. Worse, they realize they never did. This realization is not spoken, it is felt. It manifests as hesitation, overthinking, second guessing. Each decision becomes heavier, each move slower. They begin to anticipate threats that may never arrive, exhausting themselves in mental simulations. You are no longer reacting to them. They are reacting to the possibility of you. Machiavellian strategy values perception over force. When your behavior cannot be forecasted, perception fractures. The enemy cannot establish dominance over what they cannot calculate. Their attempts to regain control become erratic, overreactions, emotional leaks, misaligned aggression. These behaviors expose weakness to observers, further diminishing their perceived value. You remain composed, internally consistent, yet externally unreadable. Controlled unpredictability also inverts power dynamics. Instead of you adjusting to their actions, they adjust to your potential actions. You become the variable in their equation, the unknown constant that destabilizes every plan. This is psychological asymmetry. They expend effort seeking clarity, you maintain ambiguity. Over time, the mind cannot tolerate sustained uncertainty. It demands resolution. In its absence, fear replaces logic, identity weakens, confidence decays. The enemy either withdraws, attempting to escape the pressure, or self-destructs through reckless behavior. Both outcomes serve the strategist. Unpredictability is not disorder, it is dominance disguised as neutrality. It ensures that every interaction, real or imagined, occurs on terrain you control. When patterns die, authority transfers. The enemy may not recognize the moment it happens, but from that point forward, their mind no longer belongs entirely to them. The ego is the most exploitable structure in the human psyche. It is loud, insecure, and constantly seeking validation. To provoke it is not to insult openly, but to apply pressure so subtle that the target believes their reaction is self-generated. This is where mental domination becomes surgical. The strategist does not attack the ego directly, he allows it to expose itself. A restrained gesture, a controlled remark, or a deliberate indifference can trigger disproportionate responses in those whose identity is unstable. The enemy feels slighted, questioned, or diminished, not because you declared it, but because their internal hierarchy is fragile. They interpret neutrality as disrespect, silence as superiority, calm as condescension. In attempting to restore balance, they overextend. Overreaction is a confession. It reveals emotional dependency and lack of control. When the enemy reacts too strongly, they signal to observers that you occupy their mental space. Authority shifts instantly. You remain composed, measured, and emotionally distant while they leak insecurity through excess. This asymmetry is not subtle to the subconscious, it is unmistakable. Machiavellian thinking recognizes that power is often gained by allowing others to destroy themselves publicly. The more they react, the more they discredit their own position. Every emotional outburst narrows their options. Every impulsive move reduces strategic depth. You do nothing, yet the battlefield tilts in your favor. Provoked ego seeks dominance, not resolution. The enemy becomes obsessed with winning the moment rather than preserving long-term position. They escalate conflict unnecessarily, drawing attention to themselves. In doing so, they sacrifice perception. What once appeared confident now appears desperate. What once seemed strong now appears reactive. The true trap lies in restraint. You offer no escalation, no visible satisfaction. This denies closure. The enemy replays the interaction repeatedly, attempting to justify their reaction or revise it mentally. Regret begins to surface, not for losing control, but for revealing weakness. This regret becomes internal pressure, compounding anxiety and self-doubt. Ego provocation is effective because it uses the enemy's own psychological momentum against them. You do not force them into collapse, you provide the conditions. They step into the void willingly, driven by pride and insecurity. In this stage, dominance is no longer contested. It is demonstrated quietly through contrast your control against their exposure. Once the ego has been exposed, the next operation is more invasive. Doubt is not planted through accusation, but through implication. The human mind resists direct attack, yet it corrodes rapidly when forced to question itself. Manufactured doubt is the slow poisoning of certainty, the erosion of identity from within, where defense mechanisms are weakest. Your enemy's sense of self is built on internal narratives: competence, superiority, relevance, control. These narratives are fragile constructs reinforced by repetition and external validation. When subtle inconsistencies appear, when outcomes no longer match intention, when reactions fail to produce expected effects, the mind begins to destabilize. They do not ask, "What are you doing?" They ask, "What am I missing?" This shift is critical. The battlefield has moved inward. Silence here becomes diagnostic. You allow them to observe themselves failing to influence you. Every ignored provocation, every unacknowledged effort, contradicts their self-image. The mind attempts correction, revising beliefs, reinterpreting past events. This internal revision creates fracture. Confidence weakens as identity becomes negotiable. Machiavellian strategy exploits this moment by remaining consistent while appearing indifferent. You offer no reassurance, no confirmation, no opposition. The enemy is left to confront the possibility that their power was never real, only assumed. This realization does not arrive cleanly. It seeps in gradually, manifesting as hesitation, indecision, and self-monitoring. As doubt accumulates, the enemy becomes internally divided. One part clings to former certainty, another suspects collapse. This internal conflict drains energy and focus. Decision-making slows, emotional regulation deteriorates. They become cautious where they were once aggressive, reactive where they were once composed. Identity no longer anchors behavior. The most dangerous phase of doubt is its invisibility. From the outside, nothing appears wrong. Internally, The enemy experiences fragmentation, a constant audit of thought, motive, and outcome. This self-surveillance is exhausting. Power dissolves not through defeat, but through psychological entropy. By this stage, the enemy is no longer confronting you. They are confronting themselves. You have become a catalyst, not an opponent. Their mind is occupied by unresolved questions, and unresolved questions consume authority. Control shifts permanently when identity becomes unstable. What follows is not resistance, but collapse, quiet, internal, and irreversible. Once doubt has taken root, the mind enters a state of relentless self-interrogation. Obsession is the natural consequence. Your enemy begins to replay interactions, reinterpret words, and reassign intentions. Every perceived slight, every unanswered question, every absence you imposed becomes a data point, a stimulus demanding analysis. They are trapped in an internal feedback loop, unable to escape the mental gravity you have engineered. Regret accompanies obsession. The enemy recalls moments where action was possible, opportunities to assert themselves, and realizes each decision or indecision was guided by misperception. Their self-critique intensifies. Decisions once taken confidently are now judged harshly. Actions are weighed against imagined outcomes that never existed. In this spiral, the mind punishes itself without intervention. You remain untouched, observing the unraveling with calm precision. This stage exploits the natural human need for closure. The mind demands resolution of uncertainty, but you provide none. Every attempt to predict your behavior fails. Every calculation backfires. Their thoughts oscillate between anger, self-reproach, and helplessness. Emotional energy, the most precious resource of cognition, is exhausted without gain. You do not need to act. Every internal reaction is your weapon. Machiavellian psychology teaches that obsession is a form of submission. When your adversary dedicates their cognitive resources to you, they are already under your influence. Their mental landscape is colonized. Every decision is colored by your perceived presence. They are no longer free actors in their own narrative. They have internalized the battle and, in doing so, have ceded control. The psychological spiral is invisible yet devastating. To outsiders, the enemy may appear functional, even composed. Internally, they are fractured, weighed down by imagined miscalculations, and haunted by the shadow of your strategic absence. Every attempt to reclaim mental equilibrium only deepens the trap, reinforcing your dominance without a word spoken. By the conclusion of this stage, obsession and regret intertwine, creating a cognitive prison. Your enemy chases ghosts of your actions, misinterprets intentions, and punishes themselves for perceived failures. Authority is no longer imposed externally, it has been internalized. The mind you sought to dominate now serves you willingly, even unknowingly, as it collapses under the weight of its own calculations. The final stage is not about them, it is about you. Every manipulation, every absence, every fracture you engineered has served a purpose beyond immediate victory, the consolidation of your own authority. The human desire to diminish, provoke, and control is universal, relentless, and unyielding. Those who once sought to impose their will upon you have now become instruments of their own undoing, ensnared by the architecture you constructed in silence. In witnessing their mental collapse, a deeper truth emerges. Power is not derived from confrontation, but from perception. Influence is not wielded through visible domination, but through the control of thought and expectation. You are no longer a participant in their reality, you are the unseen parameter shaping it. Every regret they feel, every obsessive cycle they endure, every doubt that gnaws at their identity, exists because of your strategic restraint, your calculated unpredictability, your unwavering composure. This stage demands reflection on the human psyche itself. People are fragile architects of their own suffering. Their egos, anxieties, and obsessions are tools you have merely exposed and exploited. It is not cruelty, it is recognition of a universal weakness. The mind that seeks certainty is the same mind that collapses under ambiguity. The mind that seeks validation is the same mind that becomes enslaved when attention is withheld. The strategist acts not through force, but through understanding these immutable laws. True mastery extends inward. Emotional dominance over others requires first emotional mastery over self. Silence, patience, observation, and restraint are your instruments, calibrated with precision. The external battlefield becomes irrelevant once the internal fortress is established. Control is no longer exerted, it is inherent. You operate from a place where influence is assumed, not demanded, and where every interaction occurs on your terms without declaration. The haunting truth is that the greatest power lies not in defeating others, but in demonstrating that defeat is optional, inevitable, and psychological. Humanity is inherently predictable in its fragility. Perception, absence, and strategic patience are enough to bend it. When the mind of an enemy collapses, it is less the result of your aggression and more the reflection of its own flaws. In the end, dominance is silent, invisible, and absolute. The one who controls the architecture of thought does not need to strike. Influence resides in the unseen, the unspoken, and the meticulously calculated absence. Mastery of others begins with mastery of self, and in that quiet dominion, the strategist becomes untouchable, leaving the mind of the adversary haunted, fractured, and irrevocably altered.